I think this next video is gonna be my best one yet. Why Vector the Crocodile is the sexiest character in all of Sonic. In fact, the script is almost done. Let me just save it real quick. Huh? Well, that's weird. Looks like something isn't working right. Ah!
Pardon the interruption.
What the hell? What? Who are you?
Allow us to introduce ourselves. My name is Cat, and this is Bugged.
Huh? What even are you? Did you just come out of my computer screen?
We're here to stop you from making that video. No one on Earth wants you to make an essay like that.
It's spooky season. You have to make a spooky video.
What? Just because it's October doesn't mean I have to make a video on a spooky topic. I can make a video on whatever I want.
must!
Okay. I'll do whatever you want, just don't hurt me. I've talked before about Sonic-related creepypastas on my channel. In fact, my first video essay, which discussed early Sonic YouTube content, had an entire section dedicated to animations people had created about the things. Now, since I've already covered animations, I figure we should probably cover one of the mediums that Sonic creepypastas are created in the most: video games. Sonic the Hedgehog is primarily a video game-based franchise after all, so it's no surprise that there have been tons of fan games, and included in that are creepypasta games. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are aware of Sonic.exe. It's probably the most popular Sonic creepypasta as of now, but if I'm being honest, I feel like covering Sonic.exe games is a topic that's done to death on YouTube at this point. There are tons of videos out there talking about Sonic.exe games, and I just feel like I wouldn't have much new to add that hasn't already been said before. But you know which Sonic-related creepypasta hasn't been done to death already, at least in my knowledge? The Tails doll.
Ooh, the Tails doll. That's my second favorite creepypasta, behind Sonic.exe.
Why would you like Sonic.exe? It's purposely bad.
Again, I've already discussed the Tails doll's history at length in my Sonic YouTube content video, so you can go check that out if you want more information or to see more content about that guy. But in case you didn't see that video, let's have a brief summary of Tails doll's history. The Tails doll is a character originating from the game Sonic R, where he's a little robot badnik doll created by Dr. Robotnik. He has the appearance of a doll modeled after Tails, but is of course a villain, being that he's a badnik. Not only does the Tails doll serve as a spy, but it possesses somewhat creepy qualities like the ability to float at speed that is almost as fast as Sonic. The fans, deciding that the character was creepy, turned the doll into a creepypasta. It's hard to pinpoint which creepypasta started the Tails doll trend, as there were several around the same time, but people often shared the creepypasta in the form of a story, usually about someone playing Sonic R only for the doll to come to life and attack them. In fact, the Tails doll grew so popular as a creepypasta figure that it became referenced in the Archie comics. There were several main popular fan video games that featured the Tails doll, and I can't possibly cover them all, but I would at least like to play the main most popular ones for now. Couple rules. Number 1, I am only covering games where the Tails doll is one of the main characters. There are a lot of Sonic.exe games where he makes a cameo, but for it to count as a Tails doll related game in my eyes, he's got to be predominantly featured in the story or gameplay. And 2, I don't want to be unnecessarily mean. All of these games were just created by fans, some of which were just kids, so this is all in good fun and not meant to be taken too seriously.
You have to review honestly. Don't lie about the flaws.
It's not lying. I'm just gonna review them how I see fit, okay? I'm gonna at least try to be fair to them. Oh yeah, a general warning now, these games tend to have a lot of jump scares, flashing lights, gore, and blood. They're internet horror games, what do you expect? And it's to the extent where I don't think I'll be able to give specific warnings for each instance of this, since the entire games at times are made up of that. So if you're not good with flashing lights or gore or anything like that, you might want to skip this video now. With all that out of the way, we should probably get started. To begin, let's start with one of the more popular, famous Tails doll related games. Tails' Nightmare is a Newgrounds game created in 2008, whereas we play as Tails against the Tails doll. The gameplay is simple, yet it still controls pretty smoothly in my opinion, just interesting enough not to be completely boring. There's some interesting controls with extended jumping, flying, and spin dashing. I like how you can just launch Tails up into the air. His flying feels so much more useful than in like Sonic 2 or something where it's super limited. All of the art was created by the fan game team, The Blocks. I always enjoy fan games that use original assets. We don't really get much of a plot, just Tails navigating through this ominous, if not cartoonishly quote-unquote scary, spooky environment. Not actually scary, but scary in a silly way, if that makes sense.
I think that the environment is cool. Everything is dark and has a red hue. There are jagged plants and spikes embedded with rust. They almost look bloody.
The platforming isn't too difficult, but those obstacle plants and spikes can be a pain in the butt when you're learning the controls. They're very unforgiving, and if you even so much as slightly touch their hitbox, you will have a bad time. This platforming section only lasts a few minutes once you actually learn how to navigate the level. It's pretty simple. Once you reach to the end, Tails falls down a hole, and the music stops as he happens upon the Tails doll lying on the ground. Walk up to it and you will initiate a fight. If you lose all your lives, you have to restart the entire game, and I did this on this boss fight several times before I realized you could just input a secret password into the menu to jump directly to the boss fight for easier access. This boss fight is rather difficult if you're like me and you suck at video games, but while it's a little intimidating at first, it is very doable, as the Tails doll attack patterns are easy to learn. There are 3 phases. In phase 1, you just have to avoid the Tails doll's glowing orb attacks, attacking him by jumping whenever you get the chance. Sometimes the doll will confuse Tails and you'll move in the opposite direction of the keys you press when this happens. When this happens, it's best to just jump over the doll. Once you attack him 3 times, it will switch to phase 2, which was the most difficult stage for me. The Tails doll swoops down from above and attacks while the spikes on the ground rise and fall. The best way to tackle this stage is to stay still and jump, but pay attention to how you're jumping. You want a short jump to attack the Tails doll when you can, and hold the jump button to long jump when the spikes come up so you don't get hurt. The 3rd stage is the simplest. The Tails doll teleports around for a second or so, is damageable. Jump on him just at the right moment to damage him 3 times and you win the fight. After the fight, Tails runs away, only for him to be chased by the Tails doll in a jump scare that I knew was coming, but I still screamed anyways. Tails wakes up to find out that it was all just a dream.
You again? Go away already!
That's so cliche.
Maybe, but it also made me laugh with how silly it is. I think overall, while this game isn't super original or groundbreaking, it is enjoyable for what it is. A time waster for an hour with decent gameplay and original art. I like this. Tails' Nightmare 2 released in 2010, and it's pretty similar to the first game, where you just play as Tails and navigate through the levels until you reach the Tails doll boss fight. But honestly, this game has an impressive amount of improvement. Tails has more of a moveset than he did in the first one, with his flight and spin dash being adjusted, but also now having the abilities to grind on rails and wall jump. The art is similar to the original, but there is notably a little more detail, especially with Tails now having idle animations and such. The game starts off in a bright environment with tons of detail, but a noticeably eerie, glitchy atmosphere, and then has darker levels that I think are cool. Everything is really dark with a light illuminating the player, and it helps to build atmosphere. Speaking of the levels, they are so much bigger and there are way more of them than there were in the first game. It feels a lot more fleshed out than the simple platforming in the first game, with more obstacles that you have to avoid and more specific ways you have to navigate levels. There are also enemies this time, which the first game didn't have those. It adds to the challenge and helps makes the game a bit stronger in my opinion. Finally, there are a few different item boosters besides rings in the level, which adds a little bit more to the gameplay. My first real complaint is about the boss fight, because it has so many unnecessary flashing lights that it really hurts my head. So yeah, there's your warning for that. Because the flashing lights in the boss fight are to such an extreme, it feels unnecessary. I feel like they could have accomplished the glitchy, hard-to-see feel without it. Besides that, I think the boss is good. It has a few different phases where you have to learn how to slowly beat the boss, just like the first one, but it's different from the gameplay the first game had. You start by trying to attack the Tails doll as he teleports around, avoiding when he attacks. The second phase has him chasing you, and you have to try and lead him into the spikes in the walls, which is a bit hard to do, because you can accidentally hit them yourself, and Tails doll doesn't always immediately go into them. There's also the last stage where lava plumes burst from the ground, and you have to avoid them while running and attacking at the doll at the right moment. It just kinda ends the same way as the first. The boss traps Tails, he thinks he's gonna die in a pit, and then he ends up waking up from the nightmare he was having. This time Sonic is there, and they have a little conversation. It sort of reminds me of the ending of Tails' Nightmare the Animation, which I reviewed on my channel in my YouTube analysis video, because after Tails and Sonic walk away, the camera ominously pans over to the Tails doll, which is real! Dun dun dun!
The story is similar to the original one, which is to say, there's not much of a plot at all, but the gameplay has improved.
They also brought back the fun little passwords that unlock things in this game, and I thought it was really cool that they hid the passwords in the actual levels, so when you find them, you're able to use them. One of the passwords even lets you play as the Tails doll.
We get to be the Creepypasta? That sounds fun. We could fly around and then murder Tails and rip him up into little pieces.
Oh my god, no! You don't murder Tails if you play as the doll. In fact, when you reach the ending as the doll, the game basically tells you, hey, if you want to fight the boss and beat the game, you have to replay as Tails. The game also calls you a cheater if you play as the doll, which was kind of funny. The doll really just allows you to fly wherever the hell you want with its levitation powers. Weirdly, the doll can be damaged by all the obstacles and enemies, but I guess being a creepypasta doesn't make you immortal, huh? Overall, though, this is a fun little game. I enjoyed all the improvements over the original game, and I thought that it built up the gameplay and atmosphere much better. Not much of a story, but it's still fun nonetheless. Sonic Fear is apparently one of the earliest and most well-known Tails doll games, so I had to check it out. The original series was 3 parts long and was created by YesMin10. I was researching the original creator, and they make fairly popular Sonic videos, including unboxings and animated lyric videos. From what I can tell, the first game is over 9 years old. Wow. The first game in the series is Sonic Fear and Tails doll El Asesino, and I'm gonna be real, most of this game is just flashing lights and jump scares.
That is not scary. That is cheap.
For pretty much the entire game, that one generic image of the bloody Tails doll is going to be flashing on the screen, so you just have to ignore it. There are 5 main levels where we play as different characters, starting with Sonic. The whole area is dark with a center light shining on Sonic, with graves and blood everywhere. Like most Sonic EXE games, you walk and see gore. We play as Sonic and see all of his friends murdered. Tails, Knuckles, there's a part where we see Eggman's ghost right before seeing his body, etc. Occasionally, this giant Tails doll will appear and attack you. After you keep going for a while, Sonic gets trapped in this little area and the doll will attack. Once you manage to land a hit on the doll, there's a cheesy-ass screamer, and then Sonic gets transported to a second area. This area is a lot quote-unquote scarier, with a red sky, dismembered chow heads littered about, screaming in the background music, and a more enraged-looking Tails doll image flashing on the screen. Honestly, this game kinda reminds me of that shitty animation I reviewed in my YouTube analysis video a while ago, Amy's Revenge, purely because this game uses a wide range of Sonic characters, some being very random. There's some corpses like Silver, Fang of all people, Big, Rouge, etc. I thought it was really funny that they used characters from the cartoons like Sonya and Manic from Sonic Underground. We also come across the Tails doll holding Sally Acorn and murdering her in cold blood in front of our very eyes.
That's so hardcore. This game is really scary and cool with all the dead bodies and gore.
I don't know. I'm struggling to take any of it seriously. It's not really giving me any impact seeing all these bodies because at this point you're expecting it, and there's no shock value even. Wait, Vector! No, not my husband! At the end of the area, you come across this glitchy skull void and you have to jump in, which will lead to the next section. you'll see more Creepypasta doll images, and then the Tails doll starts to move closer and closer to Sonic. It uses its powers to drag Sonic towards some spikes. And then there's another goddamn cheesy screamer.
Bad.
Is it bad that I laughed at the overly sad music that starts playing when Sonic's dismembered body parts start falling down? I'll give it this. They're trying to make this game scary and then sad, but I just cannot take it seriously with how over the top it is. Maybe a few moments of gore or a small spook or two would have built up the better atmosphere. But the overuse of gore and jump scares made it so none of the scary moments actually hit. I just cannot take it seriously. I actually screamed in laughter when Tails doll turned dead Sonic into Sonic.exe. That's fantastic, amazing, great origin story. Now you can play as Tails. Like a lot of other Sonic.exe games, Tails will cry or look worried with his idle animations. Yes, it is using that one generic-ass song that every Sonic.exe game has. You know the one. You have to pick left or right, but if you go left, you just immediately die, so just go to the right. Again, it's Green Hill, but there's corpses, and then we start seeing Sonic.exe as Tails. This is kind of what I was worried about with these games, them just being like every single other EXE game, making it so I have nothing interesting to say. That was why I wasn't going to play any Sonic.exe games for this video, but this little series is the only exception since the Tails doll is one of the main villains here. I thought that the Tails doll games might have to be a little more original, being that there's a whole new villain, but no, this is just proving that this is absolutely not the case. You can have a shitty, cheesy EXE game just with Tails doll. Anyways, you just keep running until the music stops and comes to a static, and you encounter Sonic. Then there's some screamers. This is not Sonic.exe. This is Sonic Fear! Sure, buddy, you keep telling yourself that. Despite the insistence that this isn't Sonic.exe, it is literally exactly like it. Knuckles has a section next, and at this point, I think you get the idea. I'm not gonna repeat myself. You run to the end of the stage while there's scary, spooky stuff on screen, and then Knuckles dies. I can't even say that the Creepypasta Screamer images they use are scary because they're all the most generic images possible, and they use them so much that even if you were scared of this picture at first, you would grow used to it after like 2 seconds.
Games that follow the .exe format all fall into the same trap, repetitiveness. It does not feel new.
A more interesting level happens where we get to play as the Tails doll and fly around murdering Flickies and other animal friends. I genuinely think that's a little fun and that they're doing something a little different other than run and get murdered. Now you're hunting everybody!
Yes, this is what I was wanting. A game to play where I can kill everything in cold blood with my bare claws.
Well, sorry, Cat. You'll probably only have fun for like 45 seconds tops. That's all there is to this level, and it's rather short. The next level confuses me as we're playing as Sonic again, finally chasing down the Tails doll in Sonic.exe. So wait, at the beginning of the game, Sonic got killed and turned into EXE? And now there's a second Sonic? Where did he come from? Is this alternate dimension Sonic? Get used to this because this happens a ton in all of the Sonic Fear games we'll be looking at. The continuity is broken. Maybe it's like BFDI and somewhere in the Green Hills there's a machine regenerating everyone when they die, or maybe all these characters just had bonus lives or something. Don't worry about it, it's not important, I guess. This level is also ridiculously goofy. It's filled to the brim with Halloween-ass levels of spookiness. Random witches and shadows in the background, pumpkins and ghosts you have to jump over. Why the fuck is Nightmare Before Christmas music playing in this fucking background? It feels like a big departure from the first chunk of the game, which was going for a more gory, dark aesthetic to be spooky, not just cartoonishly Halloween aesthetic, you know? You can have Sonic pull some Chaos Emeralds out of his ass and then transform into Super Sonic. I don't know why Tails and Knuckles are alive when they very clearly died earlier, but whatever. It's time for an epic boss fight. Seems very unfair at first with how hard it is to see and how many attacks you have to avoid, but like the boss fights in the earlier games we played, it's beatable by just avoiding attacks and then attacking the doll at the right moment. When Sonic wins, the Tails doll and Sonic.exe die and they dissolve into thin air. Sonic falls and almost dies, but Tails catches him and they all end up okay. Everyone wishes you a Feliz Halloween. but then there's a screamer for no goddamn reason. Next game, please. Sonic Fear 2 Metal Sonic Fuera de Control is the second entry in the Sonic Fear line of games. Is it any better than the last one? I have to say, yes. First off, I think this game is slightly better at storytelling than the last one. Granted, I am still confused about some of the aspects of the story, but the game tends to have much clearer cutscenes that more clearly illustrate what's going on, and the on-screen text that they use also helps with that. It's nothing amazing, but it is improved from the first one. Now, the story I am a little confused about. I think that the game might be a prequel, as there are several instances where we see events from the first game and how it happened. For example, in the first game we saw the bodies of Eggman or of Silver or Fang, but in this one, they reveal more context behind exactly how they died. However, I'm not sure if the entire game is a prequel or if there's just some flashbacks, as there are some continuity errors if it is a prequel. We see Sally Acorn's dead body in this one, but in the last one we saw her get murdered. I also still don't know why there's seemingly multiples of all the characters, with Sonic dying and turning into EXE in the first one, but then coming back normal, or Tails and Knuckles appearing after they had died in the last one, but let's ignore all of that for now. The main feature of this game is that Metal Sonic.exe gets added to the lineup of villains, after Tails Doll and Sonic.exe fuck up a machine that Metal Sonic was in and corrupts him, I guess? They retroactively make it so that Metal Sonic is responsible for some of the dead bodies that we saw in the last game. Some people might call that a retcon, but it's an interesting idea to me, having there be somewhat of a dramatic irony of what's really happening if you were to go back and replay the first game. Since Metal Sonic is a prominent baddie here, I enjoy that they've made things a little more Sonic CD themed at the beginning, with a shitty edited version of the Sonic CD opening cutscene, CD music, and CD themed levels. This first level here is Palm Tree Panic, and hey, look at all the things that they've improved. First of all, there's a better interface with there now being an actual counter for your rings, the time limit, it looking more like a classic Sonic game, nice. My one complaint is that it's more zoomed out than the last game was, making all the sprites smaller and kinda hard to see. Also, the level itself starts out seeming mostly normal. No overabundance of gore and corpses, just a Palm Tree Panic wannabe level. However, there's still hints that something's wrong, like the Creepypasta characters hiding in certain places in the level, or there being random bloody spikes hidden out of the way. This is much better than the last game in my opinion. Sure, you can bombard your audience with gore and bodies, but it works better if you ease them into it. If you set up a seemingly normal environment, you can build the tension with those little creepy, out-of-place details and set up that feeling that something isn't right. Also, if there's gore the entire time, the player is super desensitized to it. If you save it for later, bigger, shocking moments, then it'll be better used as a shocking tool. I had no reaction other than laughter with the first game's gore scenes because it was basically the only thing that was happening, and it was cheesy and not done well, and it wasn't impactful in any way whatsoever. I was used to it within the first 10 seconds.
Invalid point. There was plenty of gore and screamers in this game before the level even started. Don't lie to us.
Well, once we reach the end of the level, there's a screamer, and then the game does not hold back on the gore or anything like that after that point. Sigh. The main plot from here on out is just the Tails doll, Sonic.exe, and Metal Sonic.exe trying to kill Sonic and everyone else, while Sonic is trying to stop them. Something a little neat is that Metal Sonic has voice acting. It's not amazing or anything, but it's a nice touch, and it more explicitly spells out part of his motives for wanting to hurt Sonic.
Long time no see, Sonic. My loathsome copy.
Ooh, he sounds scary.
I also do like the game having somewhat of a bit more structure to it. The last game was mostly just wandering around levels, waiting for screamers or death, but in this game there are more objectives. You want to get to the ends of the levels to face off against bosses and try to stop them one by one. Some of the levels seem a little unfair, where there are sections where you have to get hurt to get through it, but since when have Sonic.exe games ever been fair, am I right? First, you have to go through the Tails doll's levels. I think there's a neat concept here, where the doll has been sort of cloned a million times and there's bloody writing on the walls telling you to find the original. Speaking of the writing, this game has a lot more clear written instruction. From ominous bloody warnings written on the walls, which can be a cool idea if used correctly, and from just straight up telling you what you need to do before the boss battle, Maybe this is the autism speaking, but I genuinely think that's a really helpful thing to do. To guide your player through the game and tell them what the goal is so they aren't lost or trying to figure it out themselves. Though the boss fights aren't very complicated, it's mostly running at and attacking the enemy while dodging. Sonic.exe's level is much of the same, with the main notable part being the goofy-ass Sonic.exes in the background of the level. Woo, so scary. So let's just skip to Metal Sonic, who's a little more interesting than the other two bosses. Part of his motivation isn't just being corrupted by the other creepypastas, but he wants revenge on Sonic for beating him in that race in Sonic CD that one time. He wants to prove that he's the real Sonic, while Sonic is just a sussy imposter of him. His sprite is a little silly though, the blood looks like it was scribbled on in MS Paint by a first grader. That's pretty much how all the gore in this game could be described as. Metal Sonic's boss fight has you reflecting debris back at him to damage him. After this, there's a fake out ending with a screamer. Police Hollow! They bring back the ridiculous fucking Halloween-y stage with the Nightmare Before Christmas music from the last game. I can't fucking take it seriously! Ah! And then they try to do some more of that interesting concept, where we learn new added information that builds upon how we saw the stage last time. Now we know that it's actually Palm Tree Panic Zone Act 2! I guess. I mean, it really does not look anything like it, but, cool. I can't believe I'm gonna say this, but there is a genuinely kind of cool cutscene here. Metal Sonic begins to transform, and there's so many images and effects and dramatic music and voice acting. It's like, okay, I can tell the Yes Men 10 is trying more here to actually create a cool scene, and I can appreciate that.
All living things kneel before your master.
The final boss fight combines the mechanics from the prior two types of boss fight. You can run and attack the Metal Sonic.exe, or you can reflect debris back at him. Then you can transform into Super Sonic and take on the last section of the battle. Before Sonic can really finish it off, the Tails doll and Sonic.exe take Metal away, and the game hints that the battle isn't over. The end for real now. The last thing the game gives us is a frankly hilarious password. Overall, Sonic Fear 2 suffers from a lot of the same problems the first game did, but it is way better and more tolerable in my opinion, given that it is less a 20-minute game that's nothing but screamers and flashy lights and gore, and it has slightly more story and effort put into it. But like, at the end of the day, none of these are really good games, you know? It's not like the third Sonic Fear could be a legitimately good game, right? Okay, so Sonic Fear 3 was really fucking surprising! Even though Sonic Fear 2 was better than the first one, nothing really prepared me for Sonic Fear 3. In my opinion, it is a legitimately good game, and I say this very seriously. I don't know how Yes Men 10 went from making this to this, but the improvements here are wild. First, let's look at the gameplay. It is pretty similar to the last game, although they've added a few new elements. For starters, there are now levels in the game where you have to switch between the characters, kind of like Sonic Mania Encore mode. What's more, this game has playable Amy in it? For reference, this came out in 2020, so a few years before she would be playable in Origins Plus. I think she plays rather nicely too. She has a normal hammer smashing attack, but also an attack with her hammer that launches her into the air, higher than a normal jump. Once you master it, it's useful for getting places that Sonic can't. I also just appreciate Amy being here in general. Cute classic Amy at that. Amy is a super great character, and I think bringing a cute, kind, caring, but tough character into this creepypasta, gory-ass world makes for some great ideas. Now let's look at the story and how it's portrayed to us. The game is set after the first two games, with the Tails doll having created several villains, Metal Sonic.exe, Sonic.exe, and now Metal Knuckles and a Robo-Egg villain. Tails doll killed all the innocent animals in the land, and now it's the apocalypse! Sonic and friends must finally put an end to it all! Tails doll has some voice acting and... Wait! This game has fully animated cutscenes? Created by Yes Men 10 themselves? Genuinely, that's really cool that they put so much time and effort into the cutscenes, and they all look smooth enough, and it really tries to mimic the style of the classic characters. I really enjoy it and think it does a good job. The first two chapters are really just introducing you back into this world, and there's one more mechanic that I should talk about. You might notice that in the top corner there's this meter with the character you're playing as looking scared. I think that the drawings for all of these meters look rather nice, and they express the emotion of the character rather well, as when you get to more intense boss fights later, the characters start looking angry. Though the meter isn't just there to show the character's emotions. See, the last games were pretty overrun by jump scares, and there's a few in this game too, but they really cut down on it and use it much more sparingly in this game, which I really like. This game actually had a few intense moments purely because they aren't bombarding you every moment with flashing screamers. They save their jump scares. Now, every so often, a creepypasta monster will pass by your character with a loud sound cue, and the emotion on the meter will turn to really scared. The meter will then start to drop, sort of an indicator that whatever is hunting you has spotted you. You have to crouch and hide until the meter fills back up. Now, I really love this. It kind of reminds me of in FNAF Security Breach, when you're wandering around only to be spotted and you panic and have to hide. Side note, I don't want to see no comments about FNAF Security Breach's fear factors. That game is good and can be scary as shit, and I won't tolerate FNAF slander. Anyways, this mechanic isn't as scary as FNAF's mechanic, because you don't actually have to put effort into hiding yourself. You only have to crouch, but it still makes for good vibes and ideas. I like it. Similarly, randomly throughout the game, the music might cut and the screen will randomly get very staticky. I don't think this actually means anything, and crouching doesn't do much to make it go away in my experience, but it adds a little random feeling event to build a little more tension. Anyways, Sonic eventually encounters the Tails doll, who proceeds to capture Tails in front of him. Tails doll reveals that it's captured Amy, Knuckles, and Tails, and so one by one, Sonic has to save all of his friends, with pretty similar zones. First, you play it through a zone as either Amy, Tails, or Knuckles. At the end of the first act, you will encounter one of the villains, who will trap them. Then, you play through the same zone, but as Sonic now, tasked with going to save your friends. As you travel through the level, you'll get images that flash and show the friends crying as they're being hurt and tormented by the villains. Once you reach the villains, they all have boss fights with 3 parts to it. They'll begin with a unique section where they attack you and you have to avoid their attacks. In the second phase of the boss fight, you have to chase them like some of the boss fights in the previous game. And then the final phase is sort of like the Sonic 3 and Knuckles Death Egg fight, or maybe like the Metal Sonic fight in Knuckles Chaotix. I don't know what else to compare it to, but the bosses transform into giant, more powerful forms. The fights are a little long, but not too difficult to manage, and the ends of the fights feels dramatic, which is fun. After you defeat each boss, they disintegrate, and Sonic is able to save his friends, who join the team one by one after he saves them. Of course, when they join the team, then there will be sections in the level where you can switch to playing as them. My favorite level in this game has to be the zones with Amy, who's exploring the destroyed Mystic Cave zone. The background has a muted red to it, but everything else is very dark and ominous. The music is really pretty but unnerving, being some sort of creepy music box tune. This level, and really every other level with Sonic's friends, starts with Amy following Sonic.exe, whom she thinks is the real Sonic. Overall, Amy navigating through a fucked up, creepy, haunted level has such great vibes. It's my favorite thing in this game. Also, while it's fresh in my mind because of this level, I should mention that the music in this game could be really good. I felt like the music in the previous games was fine, some good songs, some mess songs. I should probably shut up about the Nightmare Before Christmas music that I will never get over already, but the soundtrack feels like it fits the tone of this game a lot better, and it helps to contribute to the creepy atmosphere that they're setting up.
I like the zone that you play through near the end, the Dark Tower Zone. A black as night environment with red leaking through the cracks like lava. There's bright red blood smeared across the floor in some areas, and some parts where Amy has to smash through bloody chunks to get through. It's so gross and creepy and cool. I'd like to smash some bloody chunks.
Right. Another cool part about this section is that there are sections where everyone has to work together, like this puzzle where each one of the 4 characters must hit a certain switch to continue. I like puzzles that can only be solved with the power of working together as friends. They get to fight the Tails doll just like all the other bosses, but the game isn't actually over. The Tails doll transforms into this evil, Satan-like transformation. A little silly, but I love the creativity. Sonic tells his friends to go after the emeralds while he takes on the doll. And then there's a really neat reference to a Sonic Mania cutscene. I love this a lot. Great example of how nice these cutscenes can be. For the final part of the game, we cut between segments where we play as Sonic running and dodging the Tails doll's attacks, and segments where the other characters are collecting the emeralds. It's funny how you can see a goofy little Tails doll demon way in the background here. These segments also have a neat thing where the Tails doll has attacks, where your character will be damaged, so you have to be mindful of this little bar counting down when the next attack is going to be, and prepare for it by grabbing rings and also being in a place where if you're hurt, you won't accidentally fall and die. It eventually gets to the point where Sonic is grabbed by the Tails doll and it starts squeezing him to death. Tails and Knuckles show up with 3 emeralds each, and we just need Amy to grab the last emerald and basically save the day. I enjoy how the mission objective is, can you save him? When earlier, for each of the other characters, Sonic's mission was, can you save your friend? Sonic has done his part in saving all of them, and now it's time for them to save him. I think that's really nice. I love this game illustrating all of their close bonds like that in a subtle way as they save the world together. Amy's segment is a timed race, with a hilarious meter counting down to when Sonic dies! Very dramatic, I love it. In fact, Sonic does die, no matter what you do. But Amy arrives in time to deliver the last emerald and revive Sonic back to life as Super Sonic. Super Sonic then turns Knuckles and Tails super, but not Amy for some reason, even though I know she can go super. Fuck Amy, I guess. It's not like she just saved your ass or anything. She just has to stay on the ground and watch y'all fight, I guess. The final boss fight is probably the longest fight out of any of the other boss fights. You can switch between Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles at your will, each having different attacking powers. If you play as one character, then the other 2 will be regaining health as they wait for you to switch to them again. Your goal is to avoid the attacks, attack the shield thingy Tails doll has, and then damage the doll. Some of the doll's attacks weirdly remind me of secret rings, as you have to pay attention to the tentacles and where they're going to strike in order to avoid them, much like the Eraser Jin's attack in that game. It takes a while to wear down the shield and the doll enough to win. Once Sonic and friends finally destroy the Tails doll, the game has a strangely satisfying and happy ending. Life is restored to the land. Instead of being destroyed and barren, the plants and colors return. Everyone is happy and safe together. Very sweet and cute.
This game is better than its predecessors.
I am surprised that you agree, Bugged. I thought you were being very cynical of all the games we've played so far, but this game definitely improved with all of its gameplay, story, art, everything. If you are interested in the original Sonic Fear series, I legit recommend just skipping right to the 3rd one and checking it out. You don't really even have to have played the previous ones to understand what's going on. I've summarized them all in this video anyways. I hope YesMan10 finds success with whatever other game projects they want to do in the future. There's some genuine talent here. Now, we're almost done talking about Sonic Fear, I promise. But there is one more entry that we have to talk about, and it's a game that's not even made by YesMan10. A remake of Sonic Fear was created by Vertadero G. Mequero, approximately 2 months ago at the time of me writing this, so this is pretty recent. This game is very much just a remake of the original Sonic Fear game, but if the original Sonic Fear game was made competently. Sorry, YesMan10. First of all, they fixed the issue I had with it being overly gory and not paced well at all. Instead of being overrun with jump scares and gore and flashy lights, the first few levels of this game seem completely normal, which I really like. Also, there's a lot of purely visual improvements. The layout of everything looks so much closer to an original Sonic game, and the visual elements are a lot more cohesive and unified. What I mean by that is that the original game looks very hodgepodge put together. A lot of the sprites look very out of place or they're from completely different games. Here, most of the assets look a lot more like they belong in the same level together. After a few levels, Sonic encounters the Tails doll, fights and seemingly beats him, but unbeknownst to Sonic, the Tails doll lives. After another level, it gets Sonic, and then we switch to Tails. After playing through a normal level as Tails, that's when it starts getting violent like the original game, and we see the Tails doll and Sonic.exe kill the fox. After this, a lot of the levels are just mimicking the original game, but a little better. When we play as Knuckles, it's referencing the stage in the original game where there were creepypasta images on the wall, but here the assets look like they actually belong in the game. I love this drawing of the Tails doll that makes him look like the autism creature. And it feels a lot more ominous with the music and how much more slowly we traverse the room. Knuckles takes a little bit more to encounter these images, so it feels a little more impactful. Also, I like the death scenes in this one more. They're just as violent as in the original, but it feels a little better animated, and the sound design has improved too.
Sickening wet sound effects as they rip their victims to pieces in a bloody mess. Very good.
There's an interesting little secret area, with text implying that it may be important in the future. So I wonder what kind of updates or sequels this remake might get. Unless I'm stupid and there's a way to unlock it now that I didn't know about, but this whole stage is based on one of the original stages, but a little better in my opinion. There's less dead bodies littered about, but I think that makes the gore that is there more impactful. And we still see many of the main characters that were there in the original. Also, I like the environmental storytelling, like how there will be a wall of spikes and then only a few of them will be bloody, implying that something violent specifically happened there. After a boss fight with the Tails doll, we get sent to the Hell Zone, which was funny to me. Sonic the Hedgehog is going to hell! Here the art style loses me a little bit because they throw in these dead human bodies in the background. They've got way more pixels and therefore look super out of place, which was weird because pretty much everything else in the game looked fine. Other than the weird bodies, one kinda cool part of this level is that as you traverse it, you can catch glimpses of the Tails doll stalking you in the background. They recreate that part where you have to find the real doll in a sea of clones. I think that the way they did Sonic's death scene was super gross and cool. You end up falling down a hole only to land, and then realize you've landed on a pile of bloody dead corpses. You struggle to escape for a little bit, with there being no apparent escape, until the Tails doll uses its psychic powers to send you flying up into spikes, where Sonic gets impaled with a sickening sound effect and the screen cuts to black.
So awesome and bloody.
I think it hits a lot better than the original scene, where Sonic just gets thrown up into spikes, but you see it coming a mile away. And also the original had this cheesy ass part where his dismembered body parts fell down to ridiculously over sad music. This new version does something gross, but cool with there being a pit of dead bodies, and the anticipation is built up better with Sonic's death. They leave more to the imagination by cutting straight to black. They bring back the level where you play as the Tails doll and kill all the animals, although he can't float this time. This makes it harder, but it's a change I don't really like since Tails doll's floating powers are iconic and one of the main things he can do. He's supposed to be an overpowered villain, so not letting us use one of his overpowered abilities is a little disappointing. This level does have better sound than the original one though, with the Can You Feel the Sunshine remix being a lot cooler and fitting into the Genesis feel, as well as the gross killing sound effects with the animals dying.
The sound effects are great, and they make killing the helpless little animals way more satisfying. It's also neat that the animals try to run. It's no use against the Tails doll, though.
At the end of the level, the Tails doll kills Cream in a really over-the-top way, and it works for the vibe the game is going for and has more of an impact than that one single shot in the original with Cream dying, but it is really fucking over-the-top and dramatic. Oh yeah, they finally come up with an explanation for how Sonic seemingly came back to life even after dying to become Sonic.exe. In this remake, they reveal that Sonic.exe was inside of Sonic, and Tails doll was just extracting him out of Sonic. Neat, thank you for explaining that in this he's not just some weird Sonic zombie. That also aligns more with how most Sonic.exe games portray Sonic.exe lore, but I do not care about that too much, to be honest. They also fucking fixed the Halloween level so it's not over-the-top cheesy. Instead, it's a lot more subtle and trying to be genuinely creepy with way more fitting music. There's one more boss fight with Sonic vs Sonic.exe, and then the game just ends rather suddenly? Okay. Overall, it was pretty decent, a definite improvement over the original, while still keeping the most iconic scenes and elements. I enjoyed how much more they refined it while respecting the original game. If you wanted to check out Sonic Fear 1, I would just recommend playing this instead, as it has the same story and levels, just improved. I can't wait to see if this creator does more with the series in the future. Next up, we have Tails Doll, The Beginning of the Nightmare. Why does every single Tails Doll thing have to have Nightmare in the title? I had a really hard time getting this game to run properly on my computer. I couldn't get the sound to work at all, and the window for the game kept jumping around the screen every time the level ended. Some of the buttons weren't working, like I couldn't get the talk button to work, just running it was a mess, and I'm not sure if it was an issue with my computer not having the right software to run this game or what. Anyways, I'm borrowing footage for this specific game so y'all can see how it's actually supposed to run. Anyways, this game came out almost 4 years ago, and it plays a lot more like a classic Sonic.exe game. Everything starts out as normal, with Tails navigating through Green Hill Zone with some very simple mechanics. There are some buggy areas in some of the levels, with certain enemies being placed in infuriating spots and spike pits and shit, but eventually Tails comes across a flicky. If your game isn't broken like mine was, then you can manage to talk to the thing. It tells Tails to be careful, because a doll has been murdering all of its friends, establishing the doll as the villain. It then turns straight up into Sonic.exe with generic spooky music as Tails walks through Green Hill Zone, but there's animal corpses.
Spooky.
I'd argue not. Again, just because it's gore doesn't necessarily make it scary. There's not really much building the atmosphere other than the gore and the music, which if you've seen it in other Sonic.exe games, then it's not going to be very original or anything in this one. Eventually, Tails comes across the doll and they have an awesome conversation.
Who you are?
You don't mind that. I will kill you.
This face right here, pretty much how I feel too. The doll then sucks him into another dimension and we're thrown into Damn Forest Zone, which made me laugh. So cool, did Shadow name this place? We see Sonic looking not too well, and when you talk to him we learn that this is Sonic of another dimension, and he tells us to be careful of the doll. From here on out, all of the enemy badniks have been replaced with these gray ghost-like Tails dolls, and if you touch them you will instantly die. You can beat them with a spin attack, but I found it easier just to avoid them altogether. Then you reach the first boss fight with Tails. There's some more great but really confusing dialogue.
You found my victim, Sonic.
I betrayed you.
But what the fuck?
I will kill you!
Yes, he said a naughty word.
How old are you?
11.
I'm gonna be honest, I'm so lost with this conversation and what everyone is saying. When the Tails doll said, "You found my victim, Sonic," is he talking to Sonic or is Sonic his victim? I don't know if they were just missing a comma or what. Did Sonic betray Tails doll or Tails? The only person who's making any sense here is Tails. We fight Tails doll, and the battle is pretty easy. All you have to do is avoid the doll's attacks, and then attack when you can. But the doll has so much health, it's a little ridiculous. In most early Sonic games, the bosses have I don't know, 10 or so hits to beat them. This guy you gotta repeatedly attack for 2 or 3 entire minutes. After this, there's some more wonderful, wonderful dialogue. I thought the game would end here, but there's actually a few more levels and another boss fight. It kind of sucks that you only get 4 or 5 lives in the whole game, at least from what I could tell, because it made it a little annoying to play all the way through when there's so many levels. This little trap in the middle of the Spring Yard Zone made me so mad. It took me 2 minutes to get past it because I accidentally flew into it and Tails exhausted himself and ended up slowly floating over it before dying in a pit of lava.
Sounds to me like you're just a fail gamer.
You better shut your goddamn mouth! There's one more boss fight that's mostly just the same thing. Avoid the doll's attacks and hit it when you can. Oh wait, you thought that was the end? Nah, baby, there's another zone! The alternate dimension zone! Again, great name. There's another boss fight. A little harder than the first two since you have to avoid his attacks a teensy bit more skillfully. I'll be honest, when I was playing it, I was getting a little frustrated at how long it was taking me to get through the game, with there being so many levels when I thought the game was over, but I think I was just being impatient looking back on it.
I finally defeated him. That happens to you for trying to kill me.
Tails finally finds a portal back to his own dimension, and when the game ends, all is well. So overall, this game is a pretty basic Sonic.exe-like creepypasta game, but with Tails doll. Not incredibly scary or groundbreaking or anything, it's kind of silly compared to the other Tails games we've played today, but it's also not the worst thing I've ever played.
It is terrible. Bad gameplay, bad graphics, nonsensical story.
Well, I still think it has its charm. I think the creator was planning on creating a remake of this game, and if that ever happens, I hope that they can improve upon their creation. Make an improved game with whatever weird, creepy little story they want to tell. I have no hate for them, only love. This next one is a super interesting little game, or I should say, a group of games. Creepypasta Museum 3D is a collection of creepypasta-based games created by Bones the Creepypasta Hunter, and the demo of it released in 2020. There was originally going to be more added to the game, but the full project has since been cancelled. So what even is this thing? Well, it kind of reminds me of the PS1 Haunted Games collection, if you know what that is. It's a collection of games in a 3D museum setting. There's a museum that you can walk around in, and a few different rooms to explore. This is a pretty cool concept in my opinion, and even if the environment isn't as refined as something like the PS1 Haunted Games collection, it's still neat. You'll find a bunch of different games represented by large images, and you can walk into the image to enter the game. There's also a long hallway with a bunch of images of famous creepypasta characters and basic background information about each one. The way that the information varies is kind of funny, like how some descriptions will be thorough and explain a lot of information about the origin of the creepypasta. Then there's some other descriptions that are just vague or barely have anything written. Like this one literally just says, "Not enough information yet, sorry." There's one little room where the developer put in a few fun facts about the game's development, and then two largely unfinished rooms. One titled Theater that just looks like it was going to have video elements, but as of now, it just has a jukebox with the OST of all the games. It made me laugh that the Sonic.exe one has an OST called Mindfuckery. The other large unfinished room was going to have information about getting achievements. There are quite a few games here, but I'm only going to be talking about one today. Their Tails doll game. There are, of course, some other Sonic-related games like Sonic.exe and Sally.exe, but I want to keep this focused on the Tails doll. If you want to check those games out, download it yourself. The Tails doll game is called Tails Doll: The 7 Emeralds. This game plays a bit like Slender. It was developed this way since I didn't want to go through the effort of remaking the 8 pages. What a great way to start! This description means nothing to me because I've never played or watched any of the Slenderman games.
Gasp! You haven't played Slender? It's iconic!
Uh-huh. Even though I haven't played it, I still think this Tails doll is basically a carbon copy of it. You can pick between 2 stages, one being Resort Island and looking like the stage from Sonic R, very nice and cool, and then Baldi's Schoolhouse? Why the hell is Baldi's Basics here? And why is it one of the levels that's randomly set in this game? Anyways, I mostly just picked the first option because Sonic. The environments are not incredibly detailed or anything, but I think it's well done for a simple free 3D games collection. It looks just like a Sonic level, only very dark. One creepy thing is that if you look around, you can find Sonic.exe impaled on a stick. I guess Tails doll got mad at him, spooky. The objective is to collect 7 Chaos Emeralds. When you collect the first one, the next one will appear, so on and so forth. I like that they have a shiny green glow. Their light is very helpful for illuminating where the next area you have to go is. You also have to avoid the Tails doll. He is very fast and will float directly at you, seemingly knowing where you are, so there's no use of hiding. Like the green glow of the Chaos Emeralds, his red gem will emit a red light, so if he's really close, you can see a bit of red light on your screen. Also, when the doll gets closer, can you feel the sunshine starts playing, getting louder and louder the closer it gets. Now, maybe I'm just bad at video games, but I do kind of wish it was a teensy bit more balanced. The Tails doll feels faster than the player character, which is accurate because the Tails doll is supposed to be almost as fast as Sonic, but gameplay-wise, it makes it so that the Tails doll is chasing you, you have very little chance of getting away. It'd be cool if it started out slower, but maybe more emeralds you collect, it gets faster and faster. Hell, it might even work like that already, I just couldn't focus enough on the doll to really tell. Maybe if you were able to hide from the doll, it could also balance it out a little more, but I don't know. The game developer admits that this game is a little buggy, and there's not really a lot that happens outside of what I've already talked about. If you win, you just get a screen saying, "You won!" Cool. Overall, for what it was, this 3D Creepypasta Museum thing was a cool little experience. It could definitely be improved, but seeing as it was just a free demo, I ain't too fussed about all that. I know that this project was cancelled, but I hope Bones the Creepypasta Hunter has success with game programming in the future. He seems to really enjoy making little games, as he has a few on Game Jolt. I hope that he learns and grows and makes the games that his heart desires. Okay, I was kind of dreading this next game because it's one I didn't know a whole lot about before researching it, but I had heard that there was so much drama behind it. But I have to address it. It was just so popular that I just feel like I have to address it or else people will get mad at me. So let's talk about Friday Night Funkin'. Friday Night Funkin' is a rhythm-based video game released in 2020, where the main plot is that two characters will have a rap battle against each other, and you have to press the right keys on the keyboard to beat it. It is extremely popular, especially in the modding community, as it is an open source game, so there have been thousands of mods created for it, crossing over all sorts of fandoms and songs and such in the game. Now, I'm going to be blatantly clear here, I've never played this game, nor have I ever watched a Let's Play of it. I barely knew anything about it outside of seeing people's mods pop up on social media every now and again, but I never looked too much into it before researching it for this video. Now, while the game was super mega popular, the game also received a ton of criticism. One controversy surrounding the game was about the developer Ninja Muffin 99. In 2021, he ended up receiving a lot of backlash for offensive tweets that had resurfaced. I want to give a quick trigger warning here. I'm not going to go too much into detail, but if you don't want to hear about racism, transphobia, or pedophilia, skip to this point in the video. I've heard some people brush this off as just edgy old Newgrounds humor, but in my opinion, it's really fucking bad still, and even as a joke. It's not something to joke about. There were tweets where Ninja Muffin joked about wanting to make games where you could murder minority groups like black people, Jewish people, or trans people, except for he straight up calls us the T-slur. Nice one, dude. And not just as a one-off joke, there are multiple examples of him tweeting stuff like this, making it very alarming behavior. There are also tweets where he defends an artist drawing pedophilia. The creator did try to apologize for this, basically doing that thing that every Twitter apologist does by going, I made some mistakes in my past, I was being dumb and I didn't know any better, it was ages ago. Except for, I don't really think that applies here because these offending tweets happened in 2018 and at the latest 2020. That's very fucking recent, so yeah, this creator is a big fat yikes. I think a lot of the other controversy behind this game was just because it was so popular to the point where it was impossible to avoid and people were annoyed by it, especially when there are so many mods that it becomes a real challenge for any of them to be super original. The fandom apparently had some problems with toxicity and having predators as popular creators, but I wasn't in the fandom so I can't comment much on this. Now, I ain't here to tell y'all what games you can or can't enjoy. If you want to play Friday Night Funkin', you can. I just thought it'd be good to get all that out in the open just so the information is out there. I probably won't ever play this game for myself, but for the sake of this video, I had to check it out a little bit, because like I said before, Friday Night Funkin' is really popular with the modding community, and creepypasta mods are very prevalent. And that includes creepypasta mods about Sonic the Hedgehog. Now, there are plenty of mods about Sonic.exe himself, but I just want to briefly touch on the ones that have Tails doll in them. I ain't a Friday Night Funkin' professional, so I'm just gonna briefly talk about each one. And to be honest, there's not much that I feel comfortable talking about, because some of the main Tails doll related mods had yikesy content or creators. Why? First and foremost, let's get this big one out of the way. One of the most popular mods I saw was versus Sonic.exe, and it had a few different versions. The first versions of the mod were pretty popular, and they released some demos for newer versions of the mod. In versus Sonic.exe 3.0, Tails doll makes a cameo, although the full version of this mod never ended up getting released. There apparently was a lot of drama with the team creating the mod, and a whole lot of fighting within the community. Look, I tried to research it, but it was so confusing to an outsider, and I think I barely understood it, so I'm sorry. However, one of the only things I did understand is that multiple of the mod creators got accused of being groomers with proof, so yikes, I don't feel comfortable talking about that mod at all, even though it has one of the most popular depictions of the Tails doll in a Friday Night Funkin' mod. Okay, I'll give y'all at least one mod that I'll actually talk about. Friday Night Funkin' vs. Tails doll Red Ruby Rampage. Honestly, I'm a little confused because I saw a few different versions with slightly different art, and I don't know enough about Friday Night Funkin' to really tell the difference between them. I'm sorry. It starts off with a cutscene of the main Friday Night Funkin' character playing Sonic R and then accidentally activating the Tails doll curse. I like that idea and concept. The one thing I don't like is the weird sexual joke that's written on the TV and the weird sexual face the guy makes. I don't know why Friday Night Funkin' feels the need to be so needlessly sexual, but let's move on. I like that it's accurate with the doll being a flying little creature with dramatic arm movements to indicate the different directions. I enjoy how one of the songs has sound effects from the boss fight in Sonic 3 in it. Also, I swear to God, one of the moments in the song reminded me of the song when you fight Flowey in Undertale. Once you get through the first part of the song, the Tails doll gets mad and transforms into a weird, spooky, creepypasta version of himself. I think it fits into the Friday Night Funkin' art style pretty well, although if I'm being honest, I really dislike some of the creepypasta Friday Night Funkin' art style in general. It's just a personal squick. I can't even explain it. I just don't like the weird amount of detail or expressions or something. But I at least like this guy more than I like some of the other Sonic mods I've seen. I also like that the second song is a remix of Can You Feel the Sunshine. That's fitting. Anyways, I'm tired about talking about this game. I'm sorry. I felt like I had to at least mention it because if I didn't, I might get some comments about it like, why didn't you talk about FNF? Because it's so popular, and creepypasta mods are so popular on it. But it's not a community I understand or interact with, and from what I've seen of it, there are so many uncomfortable things that I think it's best to just stay away from that one too much. I mentioned all the problems I have with the main game, the Tails doll mods and stuff, and then mentioned one mod that wasn't bad enough to make me want to die. We're done here. All in all, a lot of Tails doll games can be really similar to Sonic.exe games, like Tails doll The Beginning of the Nightmare or the Sonic Fear series, which I'd argue are literally just .exe games, but they feature Tails doll as one of the main villains. There are a lot of standard creepypasta internet horror tropes that they can fall into, with jump scares and blood and stuff, but I also think there's a lot of room for originality. Even if the stories aren't completely honed, sometimes they can do really interesting things with the gameplay. Sometimes they can have interesting themes or fun settings. And sometimes, I think they could have the potential to be legitimately scary. Although I don't think too many of the games that I focused on today quite reach that mark. Overall though, it's fun seeing what people do with the Tails doll. I hope that people will make more games with him and try new things. Definitely let me know down below if there are any major Tails doll games that you want me to check out. Who knows, maybe next Halloween we could play some more delightfully spooky games. So, was that a spooky enough video? Are you two happy now?
Satisfactory.
Yeah, I love watching people play spooky games. You covered it good enough for now.
Heed our warning. We will return.
Oh my god, they finally left. Thank God, those two are really weirding me the hell out. Well, I think that's all for now. Thank y'all for bearing with me through this video. I'm sure you could tell by the nasaliness in my voice that I got sick halfway through recording, but hopefully y'all still had fun. See you next Halloween. Bye!